pandemic got us into a reflective space and made us look inward to see what we can do for the world at large. As a self-expression coach, I became a catalyst for women and started Vani, a one-on-one coaching program for women on finding their voice, to speak up, to be visible. As a storyteller, I spotted there were many ordinary people amongst us leading extraordinary lives, making a difference to the world, and they needed to be heard. Thus was born You and I with Rashmi Shetty, where amazing personal journeys with their uniqueness and individuality are showcased. A reaffirmation of the fact, open your eyes wider, the world is far more beautiful when we acknowledge the presence of both you and I. My guest today is Dr. Neelima Deshpande, a gynaecologist with expertise in menopause and sexual health. Neelima has over 3 decades of international experience in women's healthcare and has treated over 10,000 women with a variety of health problems. A certified WILDFIT coach and a coach of Meipadam and Karlakattai, she is a fellow of the RCOG and FSRH London with qualifications in evidence-based healthcare, psychosexual therapy, EMDR, hypnosis, EFT, and the Lefkoe Method. Listen in as Neelima shares her story on what got her to understand the value of true happiness. Hi Neelima, such a pleasure having you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. It's an honor for me, especially with the amazing work that you do and the medical background that you come from, but still make it so real and plausible for us to lead normal lives is what makes you a great guest on this podcast. Thank you so much for agreeing to be with me on this journey called You and I with Rashmi Shetty.
Thank you so much, Rashmi, for getting in touch with me and for giving me this opportunity to be with you and to share a little bit of what makes, being a gynecologist, being a doctor in the world, the real world.
And, before we come to Dr. Neelima Deshpande, the world knows today, I want to know what was little Neelima like.
I grew up, I was born in Belgaum. My dad's an army officer, my mom's a gynecologist. And I spent some time in Mumbai, in Kolaba. And that was the place where I've got little photographs of myself. And I used to love playing with dogs then. I used to love dancing. And after that, I spent some time in the UK with my parents. My dad was the defense attaché there. And it was difficult, I would say, because being an Asian kid in a white locality of London, it had its challenges. And then my mom was working at the time, so I used to spend quite a bit of time at the childminders. My sister was born at that time, in 1972. And then we got sent back to my grandmother when my dad was due to be posted to Russia. So we spent a lot of time with my grandmother in Pune in Sadashivpet. So that was one of my happiest times because every weekend I used to go and visit my cousins in Pashan and NCL. My mama was a chief scientist of the agriculture department in NCL. So we used to have amazing times, running around, playing, I can't even remember, rounders. We used to play rounders and then in the summertime go along, chase butterflies. And my mama used to love bringing us mangoes. So we'd hang out over the edge of the balcony eating mangoes. So that was one of my most amazing memories of being in Pune at that time and visiting my uncle. My mama later on died very young. He died in 1978 and kind of upset the whole family. So around that time, my dad was posted to Delhi. So I grew up in Delhi. I did most of my schooling in Delhi in Loreto Convent and DPS Arkipuram. So that was fine. And I did my first part of my medical schooling in Lady Harding.
Always a good child, a good girl, topper, very good in studies. But what pushed you to be? You were just born brilliant, Neelima.
No. I was a very mediocre student. I used to hate mathematics. I never got good marks in maths or something like that. And I remember this is around the time that 4 or 5 years after my mama passed away, that I was sitting in the balcony with my cousins and I was saying, you know what? I have a cousin, like three of us cousins. My mama told us 6 months between us. So one of them is 6 months older than me and the other is 6 months younger than me. I was sitting there and my cousin used to do really well at school those days. I think it was when I was in eighth standard, seventh or eighth standard. And I asked her, I'm like, I really suck at maths. I don't know how to study, and I don't know what to do. I was like so desperate, to start doing better. Because, it's easy. You just have to revise. And I said, what do you mean by revise? So she says, well, you know what I do? Whatever the teacher tells on that day, I go and read it up, and then I read the next day's lessons. I said, next day's lesson, that was new for me. It's like you read in advance before the teacher taught you? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then what I do is at the end of the week, I study the whole week's syllabus. Oh, okay. Then Saturday, Sunday, I revised the whole year's syllabus. My God, like how much is she studying? I started to get an idea of how much one needs to study in order to do well. So I started that, and of course, like eighth standard, I suddenly went to the top of the class. I wasn't flunking in maths anymore. I was able to crack like 90%, 95%. Then ninth and 10th, I carried on studying like this and I kept getting really good marks. I was an NTS scholar. Then 11th and 12th also did well. I kept my scholarship till the end of my post-graduation, which is quite unique.
Oh,
All
okay.
my education was supported by my scholarship. My parents didn't pay any fees. Most nursery kids pay more in fees deposit than I paid for my whole medical education.
That is so true. So, have you ever gone back and told your cousin what amazing advice she gave you and you are
Yeah.
who you are because of her?
Yes, yes. Very often, right? I tell you, if you hadn't told me that, I don't think I would have studied so hard. Mind you, later on, as I've gone to medical college, I came across Tony Buzan and Use Your Head.
Huh?
And those study techniques, I thought, I wish I'd got this book then. I wouldn't have like studied hours and hours and hours. Things would have been so much easier. Because there was one point in 12th standard, I was finishing my chemistry notes and I used to rewrite everything and study. And my dad came and looked at me and said, you really need to take rest. You can't study any harder than you're studying right now. Something needs to change. I just didn't know how. There was no Tony Buzan that time in India.
And now, when you look at all these children who are running between tuitions and extra tuitions and extra classes and so much of coaching, what would you want to tell them and the parents, Nilima?
We live in a time where access to information and rapid techniques is just like, it's unbelievable what you have at your fingertips, right? On
Mm.
YouTube, on the internet. And you have rapid learning techniques now. You have like so many things, speed reading, different kinds of mathematics skills. You have amazing writing tools, mind maps. You have study skills, study tools. You don't need to work this hard. You certainly, maybe one coaching class is more than enough because our education system is kind of just directed to completing your boards. And I think what the coaching companies offer is an avenue into your career path, etc., which they may not be able to cater to in school. Besides that, I think the kids of today have access to so many extracurricular activities that broaden their minds. They allow them to go into so much depth with so many amazing things that there is no child today that needs to feel deprived of enjoying what they do. Whether it's robotics or aeronautics or designing model aircrafts, whether it's looking after pets, dog training, learning how to, go on a farm and look after them, organic farming, agriculture, hydroponics. There is absolutely no end to what kids can do to learn how to be functionally great human beings. I think that's more important than just mugging up to get the next qualification. I'm part of the Iron Ladies Teams program right now. And, they teach some amazing skills over there to the kids. And one of the things that I wanted the kids to understand was that, who are you going to be? Who do you want to become? Okay, you study this and you'll, earn a lot of money, but what kind of person are you becoming?
Mm.
And the kids are amazing because they have suddenly, their light bulbs go on. Look, I don't want to be miserable just studying and getting a degree and going off on a tangent because it makes my parents happy or it makes some teachers happy. I guess my education and getting into programs like this taught me a lot about what life is about, where our happiness lies, where our purpose lies, where our feeling of fraction lines.
Okay, and somewhere our education system doesn't address all of this.
Not at all.
And I think even parents don't have a choice, because once you put the child into the typical scenario of competition, competition, and competition, there is nothing to help the child in the holistic development. So, where would you suggest looking back? Should the lines be drawn for the child to choose what he or she wants to do, to the parents to understand that there's more than competition that makes a person happy in life, you know? And so, if there is something that you'd like to tell parents, especially the younger ones who are now already wondering where they need to put their children, what is it that you'd like to tell them, looking back at whatever you've seen?
I can only go back to my childhood and the teens I'm seeing now because I don't have kids of my own. And I have nieces and nephews, and I look at them and I wonder if parents realize that their kids will learn a lot more if they're having fun, if they're given lots of positive, encouraging statements rather than being scolded for not getting XYZ marks or not understanding something, because each child is different in how they learn and what they absorb and how something occurs to them. It was like for me, it used to take me at least 2 years before I actually understood the mathematics of the class before. And in terms of when you come to applied mathematics or applied physics or applied science, it took me a lot longer after that to actually understand it. It was only going through biochemistry and learning physiology and the dynamics and optics. When we started studying optics in ophthalmology, when I started to understand the optic, the physics of optics. So each child is different, and their ability to learn and assimilate what they learn is also different. I think the best that parents can do is provide that supportive atmosphere where kids are free to explore and they're not railroaded into a career too early. I mean, nowadays, we know from research that most people will change their careers between 4 and 7 times in their lives. So to tell a child that, look, this is the end all and be all, and if you don't get this, then like you're going to turn out to be a loser or something, is like setting that child up for failure. And then what parents should probably be more focused on is how to minimize the child's feeling of ever having like been a failure as a loser, and that failing is actually great. Making mistakes is great. And understanding that unless you make the mistakes you're going to make, you won't learn the things you need to learn. So no career is forever. If you don't like it, you can change it. That's great. But in terms of being happy is also about the kind of contribution you make. And this I learned from a podcast I heard with Naveen Jain. It was on one of the Mind Valley podcasts that Vishen Lakhiani was with Naveen Jain. And Naveen Jain's written a book called Moonshots. And he was also on that podcast. And he was talking about how he used to tell his children that, what big problem in the world are you going to solve? And he didn't like narrow them down. You got to have this career, you have to be an engineer, whatever. But his kids, even in the teenage years, of design projects that help a huge chunk of society. They help humanity in so many ways. And I suppose most parents don't think like that.
Yeah.
The most average parent is not thinking about how what they do has an impact or what kind of benefit it's going to give to the people around them. How is it that they're going to contribute? If the parents start thinking like that, then so will the children. So many times children don't understand that parents don't understand that they're modeling for their children.
You're right. You're right.
And they do what you ask them to do. They do what they see you doing.
True. And was your foray into gynecology because you saw your mother do medicine?
Yes, I saw how much my mom was respected in the family, and how much like they used to value her word. I think that was the key for me to practicing medicine. Also, I used to see how people used to come and get better, and they used to thank her so much. And my own experience of being sick as a child, I only needed my mom to come and just sit with me and put her hand on me, and I'd feel better immediately. I thought, wow, that is the kind of touch I want to have. So even as I did my gynecology practice, I always held my mom in my mind, whenever I treated patients. And I used to always think, I used to, and I'm a postgraduate teacher as well. So I used to teach my students, and I say, your touch should be like your mom or your sister. It doesn't matter what background your patient comes from. When you touch that person should always feel that that touch of love is there. So that my mom played a big role in how I approach my patients and how I treat them, and that is what I used to teach my students.
Okay. And as you moved into gynecology, the sheer joy of bringing another life into the world and the health of both mother and child, was that the inspiration, or was there something even more beyond that that made you want to continue to be in this part of specialized medicine, Nilima?
Strange, and nothing so lofty. Nothing. My first love was pediatrics. I loved medicine and I wanted to do pediatrics. I'd done my internship in Srirampur at St. Luke's Hospital, and I loved, working with children and doing the work there. And I was a topper in medicine for my final MBBS, so pediatrics was an easy, like it was the first choice. And I went in to do pediatrics, and I just couldn't take it. It was one of the most heartbreaking times of my life. I did pediatrics for 3 months. I remember being stuck in the emergency room and because the junior most doctor, you're on there like till somebody tells you to go, you hang around. And I remember the sound of babies crying, because we start putting IV lines and emergencies coming and doing bone marrows, and it was a harrowing time. I think until quite recently, I couldn't stand the sound of babies crying. It was so difficult. And it was when I started, I said, I can't take this. I just can't do this. And I had different rotations. I was working in genetics. I was working in neonatology. And I was thinking, my God. And when my first love was actually veterinary medicine. I wanted to do veterinary medicine. My mom said, no. If you can treat human beings, why do you want to treat animals? So I did human medicine, and then I did pediatrics. And then I was like, God, this is like veterinary medicine. It's probably even worse. And then I had a brief time in obstetrics, and I thought, wow, this is nice. These people are all healthy. There's nobody who was like terribly sick. So I moved into gynecology. And there was also the thing that you get to practice medicine as well as surgery. And women are mostly healthy. It's very rare that you come across very, very sick people. Of course, in gynecology, you do with the cancers and things like that. But it's not like a medicine ward or a surgical ward. It's like filled with sick, really sick people. That's surgery. So that was the motivation behind going for gynecology and obstetrics. And of course, my mom was already a gynecologist, so she had all of the books, and she was a good sounding board for me when I was doing my post-graduation to actually talk about cases, and we had amazing discussions then. And she is probably the one who's taught me how to like face up to challenges. I remember there was a patient in my final year of post-graduation where we'd done a lung tap. She's got fluid in her lungs, a patient with ovarian cancer. And I'd gone and done a fluid tap for her, and there was air, because of the procedure, air started to leak up. And I was like terrified. And I was like, you got to face up to it. Go get your consultant, go find somebody, face up to it, sort it out, correct it, whatever. And I remember thinking, yeah, you can't afford to be afraid. Even if somebody dies on your shift, you got to face up to it, and you got to do the right thing and stay on the right track. And that's what I did. That's what I learned. It toughens you up and makes you, the person of integrity that you want to be. It's only by doing it that you get to become the person you want to be. So, my mom.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, all that you spoke about children role modeling their parents and taking it forward was like so beautifully shown in and showcased in your life, Nilima. And as you progressed in gynecology and you noticed everything that's happening around you, how did health, fitness, and dogs come into your life?
I've always been a dog lover, and my first dog was when I was 8 or 9 years old, but he was too big for us. He jumped on my brother, who was about a year and a half or 2 years old, and he got given away. I was like heartbroken. Then we got a smaller dog. The first dog was Lucky. And then I used to be a fitness freak, like right from my childhood. I was always on the sports team. I was on relay, long jump, high jump, and even before I went to the UK, I was like really, really keen on self-defense. I went and did my karate green belt, and I was running, skipping, normal stuff to keep a lot of stamina. When I was in Delhi, I did a lot of horse riding as well, swimming. So I've been in sports quite a bit. Then with the dogs, after I went to the UK, I didn't have dogs, so my parents were looking after my dad here. And then as I went through in 2003, I went through two spinal locks immediately after I got my consulting job there, and that kind of really floored me. It brought me to my knees, is like a maybe metaphorically and really. I spent most of 6 or 8 months lying on my back, and I wrote a lot of poetry those days about my back and the spine and the depression, the anxiety, all of that stuff. In the middle of that, I had a physiotherapist friend, and he taught me a song. He said, I said, I just wish I had a dog. I just wish I had a dog. And the song he taught me was, how much is that dog in the window? The one with the waggly tail. How much is that dog in the window? I do hope that dog is for sale. So I used to sing that song every step I took. Now I was going through a really hard time where I couldn't even walk between two lampposts. Just when my parents weren't there, I used to just every step I used to sing this song, and that's what got me walking lamppost to lamppost, lamppost to lamppost. And then I moved from the gynecology department to sexual health. Because when I was in obs and gynae with the back surgery, I couldn't even lift babies. Those days, even now, babies are heavier than they used to be. So the average weight of a baby would be 3.4, 3.5 kgs. To lift that with the spinal surgery used to be just too much. So I moved sideways and I moved into sexual and reproductive health. And after I got that job, because there was a period in between where I didn't know if I would get the job or not, there were lots of restructuring going on in the NHS and funding wasn't available. One day they said, yes, we've got funding for your job. Another day they said, oh, no, we're still waiting on funding. So the day I realized I'd got funding, I went to the Greyhound Kennels. There's a set of Greyhound Kennels in Rubery. And my friend, physiotherapist friend recommended that I go to that place. And again, I started off with walking one dog at a time, from one lamp post to another, because they needed volunteers to walk those dogs. These were all retired racing greyhounds. And I had chosen two of them I really, really loved, and I walked them everywhere. Unfortunately, because my job took so long coming, they got adopted out. After my job, I went there and I chose my first greyhound. Her name was Kavi. But she was called Kylie. I called her Kavi. So got her, and yeah, so she was with me. And then a year and a half after she was there, I got my second dog called Cookie. I had two dogs while I was in the UK. So I credit them with everything, right? With my ability to walk, because if Kavi hadn't been there, it wouldn't have allowed me to start walking again. And she was 4 years old when I got her. And just having her on the leash, and she's not very, she's quite tall, so she's at hip level. So I never had to bend to look after her. So her head would be at the height of my hand, and then we'd walk from lamppost to lamppost and come back. And greyhounds are amazing dogs, they just like to chill. Once you let them off the leash, they do their running, they come back, then they just chilled out, totally chilled out. So she was the perfect dog for me. And Cookie, but she was not terribly affectionate. So then when Cookie came, I got the affection I wanted. So Cookie was responsible for me wanting to live life. He got me out of my depression in a big way. When I got Cookie was 4 months old. It was a high energy dog, Jack Russell Terrier. and very willful and stubborn as they're supposed to be, but very, very loving. And I realized, my God, if I'm going to have cookies, then I need to up my fitness. So I started to bring him to agility lessons. Agility lessons means I had to run with him. So
Okay.
that one got me again fitter, running with cookies and learning to quickly move from one side to another. That kind of got me fitter and fitter. In the meantime, my physiotherapy, pain relief, all of that continued to go on. And in this search for healing, I went through, rather than trying to find a suitable counselor or somebody, I just was really struggling with that. I decided to just go ahead and learn the stuff myself. So that's how I ended up studying NLP and EMDR and EFT. And I did a course in sex therapy at the time with Relate and the University of Hull. And as part of that, CBT, all of the stuff that comes with couple counseling. There were millions of times I was thinking, oh my God, I'm really not cut out for this. How am I ever going to manage? I'm not cut out for this kind of stuff. I persevered with it. And finally, I got my diploma in 2007, and then I got my fellowship of the faculty in 2008. So I think the dogs were instrumental in many respects because they helped me to make me want to live. Then I went and did all of this stuff to recreate my career. And I had kind of pledged to myself, I've given so many years of my life to working in the UK. I need to rebuild it in some way. So that's what I did until 2012. And 2012, my dad was here, my mom was here. They said, well, why do you want to be alone? And by the time I got a bit tired of being alone all the time. My parents were coming to visit me every 6 months, just helping me recover from the spinal surgery and focus on the exams and rebuilding the career. So I came back, but just before I came back, Kavi was diagnosed with an osteosarcoma. So she was put to sleep in May of 2012. I came back alone with Cookie. So since then, that journey of, I was very sick when I came. I had very severe fibromyalgia, depression. I remember when I came, I couldn't even comb my hair. I couldn't lift my arm and I couldn't comb my hair because I was in so much pain at the time. And I remember seeing a neurologist in Pune who then started me on a medication. And within a month, I was so much better. I could get back to work and start working again. I was back. There's a friend in Pune. At the time, is Dr. Nargolkar, and she had a hospital called Indira Maternity Home. So she took me on, and I went back to doing obstetrics full time, which was something I would have never imagined. I didn't even bring my obstetric books back from the UK. I wasn't going to do obstetrics. I went back into obstetrics, and it was like a step-by-step recovery. And there was a time in 2013 where I got introduced to Nutrilite by Amway. So when I did that, I took that for 6 months, and pretty much my dad's health improved, my health improved, my pain reduced by almost 40%. And I thought, this is really unique. I never imagined that, taking supplements would have such a big impact on my pain. And that's when the search began, the search in earnest, for finding what is it about nutrition that I don't know. Because considering that I'd been doing food and nutrition since I was in 8th standard. Always trying to search for the next thing that's going to work. And then that's how I chanced upon WildFit. I learned about WildFit. I was looking through WildFit and Eric Edmead's videos for almost 2 years before I said, look, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret it. I was that desperate.
No, Neelima, here I'm a little curious. You are a full-time gynecologist now, busy. You have your parents back home to give you that support that you need at that point, and you have this beautiful companion. So, where did suddenly food and nutrition come into your life? What did you see something lacking, or it was just a curiosity element that brought nutrition back into your life?
I never imagined, like, it's not like I was eating unhealthy for a
Yeah.
long time. even in the UK, I've been through a whole lot of these things about, oh, go on a detox, So every now and again, when my parents were there, we kind of stop all dairy, wheat, nuts, blah, 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 and then we'd all improve in health, and gradually it would go back to the same thing. Then I remember buying this thing about juicing. So we went on a juicing. I mean, I have the reputation of somebody who's always on a diet. And my mother used to really joke and say, oh, you'll never improve. And progressively my weight just kept on increasing. Since my spinal surgery, and because I couldn't exercise the way I used to, my weight just crept up and crept up and crept up and crept up. And I remember it was a photograph I saw, my cousin's wedding, kind of pre-wedding photographs. I was standing in the middle of these two cousins, the cousins I was playing with as a child. But I was the fattest of them, of the three of them, and I looked sick. I could tell from the way my face looked, it was puffy, and I used to feel sick. I used to feel like I had fog. I always felt like I had a big helmet on my head. That was the feeling. And my joints hurt badly. Even with that supplement, the 6 months of supplements, I struggled with that. There was improvement, but it didn't reverse 100%. And I hadn't understood the principle of inflammation. I hadn't understood gut health. I hadn't understood what it is about what I was eating that wasn't working. In the meantime, my mom also got diagnosed with diabetes and hypertension. My dad has been diagnosed with diabetes, hypertension for many years. It was just assumed that, every time I would get headaches, I had bad headaches, my mom would say, oh, family, just check your blood pressure. It's in the family. And part of me just rebelled against it. But then when I saw that photograph, I was like, no, you got to do something. So I went and researched WILDFIT, and I researched all of the reviews. And I said, if I don't do it, I'll never forgive myself, because the despair was awful. Because in spite of knowing everything, in spite of following everything, I wasn't able to regain my energy. The pain was awful. And what happened with WILDFIT was the magic. It's like within the first 4 weeks, I was like, my headache stopped. My brain was the clearest it had been. I mean, considering following spinal surgery, I'd always had brain fog. I only know, I cannot imagine how I studied and cleared exams after that. Both my psychosexual therapy, I wrote so many documents, and my faculty examination, I did all that. And I just don't know how I did it, because I had this brain fog all the time. It was like having mush inside my head. I couldn't read a storybook. I went back to reading Enid Blyton, because there was no point trying to pick up a storybook that was more complicated with smaller letters than Enid Blyton wrote. I was in really poor shape. And the brain fog lifted within 4 weeks. And that's what kept me going. If this can work magic like this, I know what else is there. It was about week 6 or 7 that I actually woke up in the morning feeling grateful. And nothing actually had happened different. And I was thinking, oh, so this is what it feels like to be grateful. Because until then, I'd done all the gratitude exercises, writing down, oh, I'm so grateful and happy that I used to write and write and write and write. That was the first time I actually felt grateful. Just for nothing, just not for anything, just grateful. And that was the turning point, because then my pain went away, my bladder improved. I had severe bladder problems. And I was a urogynecologist, so I was like, I don't know why this is happening to me. It shouldn't be happening to me. I know all the theory. What's the problem? And I was waking up 4 or 5 times at night. And I realized it was because of the fibromyalgia. Then, wow, I said, if nutrition can reverse fibromyalgia, what else can it do? And then I saw other people going through WILDFIT, my cohort. And so many people recovered. They reversed their diabetes, hypertension, so many autoimmune conditions. And that really kind of set me on the path of studying. So then, since then, I've gone into functional medicine testing, followed a whole lot of different authors, different kinds of um, mechanisms, and things have changed in biochemistry since I studied it. So there's a whole lot of revising and refreshing, because there's so many more advances in genetics and mitochondria, and the theory about autophagy, about insulin metabolism, different kinds of metabolic pathways, how fat is metabolized, and that whole kind of knowledge just kind of made sense that you want to go through it. So when I started my course in the pandemic period was when I decided that, oh, okay, clinics had shut down, everything was closed.
Yeah.
So I said the way to better was to talk, because my one of my specialties is sexual medicine. But nobody wants to talk about sexual medicine or sexual problems that much. Things are opening up a lot now. And I remember it was about in 2017 and 18, I had a friend who had invited me to Nasik. She has a big infertility center there. And she'd invited me to help out with some of the patients who had sexual problems. And while I was there, I talked to her about setting up a menopause clinic. And we called it BOOMS. So breast, osteoporosis, urogynecology, menopause, and sexual health. So it was a BOOMS clinic. And I did a radio talk show as well over a period of 5 or 6 weeks on different aspects of that. So when the pandemic happened, I thought, oh, we need to do menopause course. So I kind of converted it into a menopause course. And then I realized that the thing that got me out of menopause was learning about nutrition. It was about nourishment, because every menopausal woman doesn't go through menopause symptoms. Everybody doesn't suffer. So what are they doing differently? And I realized, my God, unless people fix their nutrition, there's no point shifting them onto medication. It doesn't matter what I talk about cancer prevention and heart disease prevention and diabetes, if they don't understand the basic principles of nutrition. So then I went and became a WILDFIT coach. While I was doing WILDFIT, I was thinking, well, there's another key to this element. You need to exercise, but it's not, exercising to lose weight. I used to keep talking in menopause. When I used to do my menopause courses, you need to learn dance, because dance has been a big factor of my life. And I love going salsa dancing, and I've done salsa for years. And belly dancing. Belly dancing is amazing. It, restores your pelvic floor. It gives you a lot of balance, restores your core. So love belly dancing and salsa because of that. And I thought, yeah, I should keep telling the women, you got to go dance, enjoy dancing, because it does this and it does that, improves the spatial awareness, etc. And I said, well, what about women who don't get to dance? And that's when I came across Ashwin Chikawa Guru Pashupati was taking a class on Meipadam. So I attended his class, and I thought, this is what I want to do, because my martial arts background was really pulling me towards martial arts, because that's what I love. And then learning about Meipadam and how it's such an ancient form of physical fitness that people all across South Asia were practicing at the time. And they were preparing them. This is the root of all classical dance form, all classical martial arts, all yoga, vyama. I said, wow, that's what I need to learn. Because I'm somebody who goes back to roots and always goes back to the basics. I was like, yeah, that's what I got to do. So I joined Meipadam, and I became a Meipadam coach, and then I moved on to become a Karlakattai coach. I've done that too.
Oh, wow.
Now I got it right. So I got the education right, I got the nutrition right, and I got the movement right. That's it. Of course, and in the menopause class, I also teach about mindset and talking about relaxing, meditation, reducing cortisol levels. So it all kind of, everything I've studied will come at the time, like 2 years ago, you would have met me, I would have thought, my God, this woman is so confused.
But now that you've done all of this, Neelima, what do you think essentially a human being needs in order to be happy?
Be happy, they need good health. really, really good health. Because if you're not healthy, you just cannot be happy. You cannot even begin to be happy. In order for good health, you need good nutrition and correct movement and the right mind. So all three things are really with I think the WHO definition of health. It's not just the absence of disease or infirmity, but a physical, mental, social, psychological, and sexual well-being. Because my background is from sexual health. So the second thing would be actually some sort of community or interaction that allows you to contribute to the people around you. Your sense of contribution is a huge part of your feelings of fulfillment and satisfaction. Because happiness is a big kind of cloudy word. It means so many different things to so many different people. But the ability to feel joy and satisfaction is much more understandable. And so having the feeling that you're making a contribution to people around you, to the creatures around you, may not always be people, but if it's animals, and that you're making a difference. And what you're doing allows you to sleep happily at night. So there's a lot of women I talk to, I say, you're healthy when A, you've got a good appetite, you're shitting and pissing normally, because those are essential functions. And you can sleep well at night. When you've got these four things, then you're reasonably healthy. If any of these four get disturbed, then your health is not good. If your health is not good, it's very difficult to be happy.
And coming back to WildFit, because that seems to be such an integral part of who you are today.
Yes, and I would have never imagined it.
And I remember the talk that you recently had given, I was part of, and I loved the way the simplicity of living is all about just understanding the basics. Yes. And so if you can just put it in a nutshell of what exactly is WildFit and why should everyone even know about it, forget understanding it deeply, but just be aware of what is the concept behind it. What would you want to tell us, Neelima?
WildFit was founded by Eric Edmonds, and he came upon it by accident as well, when he was looking at a magazine about how elephants in the wild can survive up to like 70, 80 or 90 years, and elephants in captivity only survive 9 or 10 years. And it wasn't the fact that they were on a wild diet. They were on their diet. And that's how he chanced upon this. Actually, the human beings don't need to be on any other diet than the human diet. We went on a search of what the human diet was. We spent a lot of time with many of the ancient tribes, one of which is called the Hadza tribe in Africa. And from there began the search for nutritional anthropology. So WildFit is a merging of food psychology and nutritional anthropology to instill behavior change, because you can give somebody a diet and they're not going to follow it, because the programming we go through from our childhood, through culture, through family stuff is so much that there's always a doubt about what we're doing is right or wrong. But the fact is, when you restore your body to how it evolved, your body already knows. You have that information in your genes. Your body already knows that it's supposed to live through seasons. Your body already knows that, yes, it's supposed to be having, this rich variety of vegetables. Your body already knows how to extract the best nutrition if you're a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian. Remember, human beings were eating meat. Why exist today is because they were meat eaters. It's only since grains came about that human beings are surviving enough to reproduce. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's good for us. All of these principles, these behavioral change that is done with this 90-day period, which is now called WildFit, which he called. And it's called wild because wilding something is taking it back to its origins, and that is why it is WildFit. So you're rewilding the human person to what the human diet is, not the detox diet, not a temporary diet, not the summer diet, not the bikini diet, nothing of that sort. You're going back to human diet. But I remember one of them asked about, what about Ayurveda? What about so-and-so diet? And the thing is that you don't call it a diet because it isn't one. You basically first, you're animal, then you're a mammal, then you're an ape, then you're an hominid. And each of these evolutions has got, you've let go of certain processes and you've taken on new processes. Our gut, we don't manufacture vitamin C. Some chimpanzees do, some varieties of chimpanzees do. The chimpanzees don't suffer with vitamin C deficiency, but we do. You can have the best diet on the planet, but you just take away vitamin C, you're going to suffer, you're going to die, not just suffer with problems. And that's what we see today. If you look everywhere around you in society, you see people, the fact that there is obesity, it's not that they're eating too much. It's the fact that what they're eating doesn't give their body enough nutrition. So their body holds on to the fat resource for leaner times because the body is starving in the face of life. That's pretty much what our food today is. It's lacking in so much nutrients that our body needs. So our body doesn't release the fat easily. And hypertension or diabetes, all of these illnesses, they're not the fault of the people. It's not because they're eating too much. It's just not available. You go to the market today, and we don't get the variety of vegetables. And I lived in Bhutan. I did 6 months in Bhutan as a associate professor. There's so much more variety of greens available there. Our markets don't. Our markets only produce the commercially viable.
True.
Yeah, in palak and stuff. So that is what WildFit teaches you, is how to go back to your evolutionary roots, how to eat, how your human origins ancestors would have eaten, and then to use powerful psychological techniques to counter the programming that's been pushed into you from your childhood about what you should and shouldn't eat, how you can getting over those psychological bits, and then helping you design a plan for yourself so you never need to go on another diet ever again.
So, is it in a way going back to nature to how you should be eating rather than what you want to eat?
Yeah. Yeah, but it is also about food freedom. So if you say, well, I'm going to eat this, then you understand its consequences. Today we go and eat what we want, but we're not prepared to face up to the consequences of it. Or we say, oh, we'll deal with it later, so
Yeah.
what? Well, that's what
Yeah.
our mothers say, right?
Yeah.
अरे खा लो बेटा, बात कल देख लेना, उसमें क्या है, don't bother.
Yeah, true.
It doesn't work. Or every action today is giving you a health trajectory. And what happens with our bodies is as we age, our bodies, I mean, it is still a magical body, to think that, for 30, 40 years we can continue to abuse it and we're still standing tall. But if you really looked after it, then, there is no need to suffer with any of these illnesses. It's a myth that you're supposed to get diabetes and hypertension as you age. It's a myth that as you get older, you're supposed to get dementia, Alzheimer's, or you're supposed to forget.
Neelima, we are at that point in this conversation where we take a step back into reflection, because the last 2.5 years has made all of us just take that step back to reflect on how blessed we are and how little we need to be happy in the world today. So everyone's had their bit of reflection. What have your reflections been in the pandemic?
It's a brilliant question, because it's exactly what you were talking about came to me. In 2019, I was in Bhutan. Again, I went with 2 suitcases and I came back with 3. I went to the UK because I have a house in Birmingham last year in 2020 in January, February, and I got stuck there during the pandemic. I'd sold off all the furniture in my house, and I was living in an empty house. I borrowed a mattress from a friend and borrowed some utensils from another one, and I basically camped out in my own house for 5 months until I got a Vande Bharat flight back to India. I realized that, and I'd taken my smallest suitcase because I wasn't planning on staying there for more than a week or 2 weeks, just to get the house back on the market. And I lived with 4 tops, 2 trousers, 1 night suit, and that's all I needed. And I had my phone, no TV, nothing else, just the phone. And exactly like you said, how little you need. What you need is the connection, which is why, I spoke earlier about the connection with people and a sense of contribution and a sense of being useful gives you that feeling of satisfaction and wanting to keep going. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, I lost Cookie. So he died on the 31st of March because we couldn't get a vet to see him because everything was shut down. That time really, really brought this focus on how little you need to live, and actually it's not about you, it's about the difference you can make for somebody else. And everything you do, and with this podcast that you're doing, with the people, wonderful people you've interviewed and spoken to, it has given direction and purpose to so many, and their understanding of how they should live their lives and what would take them through crises. And so many people have suffered so much loss, on just on a not just a human scale, but in terms of finances and homes and stuff they've lost and people who've died. Cost to humanity has been huge through the pandemic. And yet, we are living in one of the most safest, most affluent times humanity has ever known. So being grateful for that opportunity to be able to grow, to be able to study, to be able to make a difference and effect a change. I think that's been my learnings with this pandemic. And like you said, how little you actually need.
3 life lessons, Neelima, because you've given us so many in the course of sharing your life till now. But if there are 3 life lessons that you'd like to leave us with, what would it be?
I think one would be to live life from your heart, not to deny yourself the heart connection. For me, it's been the dogs, making sure that your life is something about giving back. You're on an island. You can't, humans don't live on islands. We're evolved from being in tribes. That's what allows us to survive. And being in a tribe means that there's going to be differences, there's going to be ups and downs. And that is the life skill to learn. Is human communication, interaction, learning about negotiation, learning about, it's not always about competition and getting ahead. It's about supporting each other and making life better for another person or other people around you. And the last lesson I would say is be willing to keep changing and growing. The more focused you can be with your own evolution, it gives other people permission to grow just as much.
Beautiful. All I can say, Nilima, with this entire conversation is in today's world, finding real people is rare. And you are one of those for me that I have found. Stay blessed. Thank you so much and honored to have hosted you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Every word you've spoken here, you've spoken from your heart. And thank you for just being you. May all your dreams come true.
Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you so much.
With that, we come to the end of this weekly quest of You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Do let us know if you know people who make the world beautiful. Write in to rashmi.thethirdeye@gmail.com. That is rashmi.thethirdeye@gmail.com. Come, let's explore this amazing world together, both you and I.